Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Cheering for Champions Conference, hosted by the Center for Health Equity Education and Research at Boston Medical Center and Boston University School of Medicine. My name is Laura Burnham, and I'm one of the Associate Directors at CHEER, and I'm very excited to be with you here today. Next slide, please. So before we go any further, we just want to thank our generous conference sponsors who've made this day possible. And so we encourage you to learn more about our sponsors by clicking on them on their individual sponsor pages on the left side of your screen. And while there, you can also connect with the sponsor representatives and learn more about some of their current projects. Next slide. We have a few housekeeping slides to go over this morning before we get started. In terms of navigating through the conference platform today and joining the different conference sessions, this morning we will have several plenary tracks. And then in the afternoon, we have 3 concurrent sessions, one for each of our conference tracks, which are equity, global, and clinical. You can access the main stage and then the concurrent track sessions through the agenda on the left side of your screen, or through the live streams tabs on the left of the platform. We also encourage you to engage with the presentations throughout the day by using the Q&A function on the live stream tabs to ask questions during the presentation. And you can also directly message the speakers or other attendees through the attendees page on the platform. One more note, you don't need to worry if you miss a session today or you aren't able to join one of the concurrent sessions that you're interested in, because all of the sessions are being recorded and they will be available on this platform for viewing 4 weeks after the conference until June 16th. Next slide. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure to bookmark the conference platform on your web browser and save the link for easy access throughout the day. You can also look for notifications and posts on the home feed throughout the day that will help guide you through our agenda. And if at any time you need any help or support, there is a support icon in the bottom left of your screen that you can click on to access some support. Next slide. Finally, for those who are interested in ANCC contact hours, the conference has been designated for a maximum of 6.5 contact hours. If you are a nurse in Mississippi, those CE credits for the conference are available to you at no cost. And if you indicated on your registration that you are interested in CE credits, an email will be sent out to you at the end of this conference. If you are a nurse outside of Mississippi, CE credits for the conference are available with a requested donation. If you've already sent in your donation, you will be receiving an email from us about how to claim your credits. If you haven't donated yet, the deadline for donation is May 31st, and you can donate today through the conference platform by visiting the CE info page on the menu to the left of your screen. And if you have any questions about CE credits, you can also visit that CE info page to learn more. CE credits are only available for sessions that you watch live today, and credits are only available for nursing staff. And we just want to make sure that you know that once you receive your email with information about how to receive your credits, you will have 1 month to claim your credits. Next slide. We also have an engagement feed and engagement challenge going on today for people who want to participate and communicate with one another. You can visit the engagement feed to engage with other participants, post photos, ask questions, and more. And the more you engage with the platform, the more points you will earn throughout our engagement challenge. And we're going to recognize the winner of the engagement challenge during our closing remarks at the end of the conference. So we really hope you have fun connecting with one another today. So thank you for your attention this morning for these housekeeping slides, and I'll now turn things over to Cheers Director Ann Merewood.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Laura, and thank you all for joining. This is our first online conference. We are all very thrilled or nervous or excited to be here. We have a huge audience. We have almost 800 people as of last count all over the world, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. And this conference really sort of represents the confluence of our three different entities: CHEER, which is like the parent organization at Boston University School of Medicine; CHAMPS, which is the program we have used over the years. Currently, it's really in Mississippi mainly, but Communities and Hospitals Advancing Maternity Practices is the program that we operate throughout the United States to help hospitals gain baby-friendly designation and improve compliance with the 10 steps. And then Cheering is our international group, which is based in Athens, Greece, and at the moment has a mandate mainly to work with refugees in those countries. Next slide, please. So it may have been updated since, because I saw a whole new slew of registrations coming in last night, but this is currently where our registrants are based. So Mississippi wins, because really this is usually the Mississippi Champs Conference, and we have had the opportunity actually to really expand it this time because of the online. So there is certainly some advantages to that. But most of our participants are from Mississippi in the United States. But you can see that almost every state is represented. Next slide, please. And then we have a very large global representation, and indeed Turkey joined since this map was made. So we have people watching us from Australia, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, many European countries, Canada, Mexico and Peru. So we have a very broad audience. And of course, anyone who's maybe arriving now and it's already late night in your country, as Laura said, you can watch the individual presentations up to a month after the conference if you want to, by going back into the platform. So welcome to all our about 800 registrants all over the world. Next slide. So those of you who are familiar with CHEER will know that our focus is on breastfeeding and maternal child health. And one of our major goals, or if not the major goal, is to reduce inequities in breastfeeding, especially in racial minorities. And we are focused on Mississippi right now with most of our programming, and then in Athens, Greece, working in Eastern Europe. And as I mentioned, this conference would usually be held live in Mississippi, but we're replacing it with this one. And we also have a bunch of sponsors. So Bauer is the main sponsor of the conference, the Bauer Foundation. Many thanks to them. They've been sponsoring us for a long time. But we also have funding from Rose, Jackson State University and Choose Love. So we thank all, and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. So thanks to everybody. Next slide. Okay, so the timeline of Mississippi Champs, and we are going to talk a little bit about our Mississippi Champs program now. So Mississippi Champs is really the kind of showcase program that we're doing right now. We've had a couple. We had a very great program that we worked on with American Indian and Alaska Native through and baby friendly. But right now we're kind of focused on Mississippi Champs as our biggest programmatic work. And that began back in 2014. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that because a large proportion of you are from Mississippi. But also I know that that is one of the reasons that other places like Alabama are so interested in our work, because they're interested in possibly replicating some of this. So we began in 2014 with funding from the Kellogg Foundation. I would say that funding is critical and was one of the main things that you all need to do if you're going to launch this kind of program. It's very difficult to do anything like that without investment. And we got more funding from the Mississippi Department of Health and the Bauer Foundation as we went along. So we started enrolling hospitals, and in 2016 we had 18 of the 43 birthing hospitals in Mississippi in the program. And then by 2018, when we got new funding, we had the capacity to enroll 39 of the 43 hospitals. So we enrolled every hospital that chose to be enrolled. And we won't go into why the other ones weren't. A couple of them were already actually almost baby friendly, so they didn't enroll. But there were, that is basically our timeline. And now in 2020, more than half of the hospitals are designated, and more than 60% of births are in baby-friendly hospitals. Next slide, please. So this is a map which shows all the all the CHAMPS hospitals in Mississippi. And since we began the program, the number of hospitals that are baby-friendly designated has gone from 0 to 22. And 66% of births now are in baby-friendly hospitals. And from those of you listening who are not perhaps familiar with baby-friendly, it is something that you perhaps need to look up online, but it is a WHO international program that works to improve conditions in the hospital so that breastfeeding success is maximized. We have had a break because of COVID. We had many hospitals that were ready to get assessed, and because of COVID and the inability of Baby Friendly USA to get out there in person, we all had to stay home. Unfortunately, we haven't had anyone designated, but Baby Friendly USA is starting up again with their visits, which will assess the hospitals to make sure that they're up to the standard. And if they pass that test, then they get designated. And our first hospital, Greenwood LaFour, is scheduled for its final assessment in August. So we're really delighted that we're kind of back on track with those assessments in Mississippi. And we anticipate a lot more hospitals becoming designated soon. Next slide, please. So we have done a few publications along the way. One thing I want to speak out to is to honor nurse leadership in Mississippi. And actually, I'll read these quotes to you now, because otherwise you'll all be reading them and you won't be listening. So these quotes are from a study that we just done, and they're about the nurses' views on baby friendly in Mississippi. So one of them said, nurses are very structured and they have their own way of doing things. And when you put a little dent in that, you have to reread everything, it seems like. I ought to be able to imitate the Mississippi accent here, but I haven't quite able to do that. I was like, well, this will never happen. Honestly, I think that's what we all thought. That will never happen. And lo and behold, here we are. And then I think my favorite quote from the entire focus group study that we do is when we asked the nurses, how they really did this against all the resistance, some of which came from physicians. And they said, because we're nurses with backbone. So I think, we really want to honor the nurse leadership of Mississippi for doing such a great work. And these quotes are from the paper that we just published in Jogan. So if you want to hear more good, fun stuff, you can go and look up that paper, and that will give you some great insights onto what the nursing staff across Mississippi thought about this process of going baby friendly. Next slide, please. This is the maps from the CDC showing where Mississippi was back in 2014 with no baby friendly hospitals. They were in the lowest group nationally. And then you can see that in 2020, Mississippi falls into the highest group nationally of the hospitals with the highest proportion of states with the highest proportion of baby-friendly hospitals. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who's going to present the data.
Thanks, Anne. Now I would like to share with you some of our Mississippi CHAMPS hospital data. And so all hospitals enrolled in the CHAMPS program are asked to submit monthly data on breastfeeding, skin-to-skin, and rooming in. Breastfeeding, skin-to-skin, and rooming in are all important variables in terms of our baby-friendly work with these hospitals. And so these next graphs will show these data over time, starting in January of 2015 and then ending in December of 2020. And so the graph you see now on your screen is showing you the rates of skin-to-skin after vaginal births. As you can see, rates have been steadily increasing since CHAMPS first began working in the state. And now the average monthly rate for this practice is 88%. You may also notice that the data on these graphs, on all of these graphs, for the first few months is kind of noisy. So it's jumping up and down a lot. And that's just due to the fact that new hospitals were enrolling during that time. So the data just fluctuates a little bit. Next slide, please. So this graph looks at skin-to-skin rates after cesarean birth. And you can see a similar increase in rates over time. And overall, the rate went from 8% to 79%. Next slide, please. This graph shows the average rooming in rates over time, which increased from 0 to 85% over the course of the program. And I also want to note that for all of these practices, for skin to skin and for rooming in, we did not find any significant disparities, racial disparities initially, or none emerged over time. Next slide, please. Okay, next we're going to be looking at our breastfeeding variables. So first we have breastfeeding initiation. As you can see for these breastfeeding variables, there were racial disparities apparent at the outset of CHAMPS in the program. So we saw that Black dyads had lower breastfeeding rates than white dyads. Over time, the breastfeeding rates overall and by racial ethnic group, they experienced significant increases, with breastfeeding initiation rates increasing from 49% overall in January of 2015 to 66% in December of 2020. And we also found that disparities were decreasing as well. So you can kind of see those dotted lines are getting closer together over time, which just shows you that those disparities, those gaps in breastfeeding rates between the different racial ethnic groups were closing or are closing. Next slide, please. So this is the last graph I'm going to share with you today. This is exclusive breastfeeding. And you can see really similar trends over time for this variable. There were racial disparities that existed when CHAMPS began in the state in 2015. And then over time, all the racial ethnic groups and overall experienced significant increases in exclusive breastfeeding rates. The trends aren't as drastic for exclusive breastfeeding as for breastfeeding initiation, but you can kind of see if you follow those dotted lines, it's easier to see that we are making increases, or the hospitals are making increases. And so overall, exclusive breastfeeding increased from 18% to 33%. And I'm going to hand things back over to you, Anne.
Okay, next slide, please. Thanks. So we had a great time with our data, and thank you all for participating. That represented a great deal of work on behalf of the hospitals, who all collected the data for us and sent it to us every month. And we feed it back to them so that they can also watch their progress. So of course we feel like we've made a great deal of progress thanks to the hard work and all the collaboration and cooperation in the state of Mississippi that we've had, which has been enormous. And so we don't want any of that to slip. So we have a few things that we're working on to sort of assess and maintain the levels, and I'm just going to share those with you. So we have funding from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to do what is called a re-aim analysis, which is basically looking back to see how CHAMPS managed to be successful, because I think we can safely say that so far, at least, CHAMPS has been very successful in Mississippi as an entity, and we don't take the credit for that in our team, although we have done a lot of work on it. But it's been somehow it has gone out to the population and to the hospitals and to the collaborators, and between us, we've made a big difference. And there's a lot of people out there trying to make a big difference, especially in states such as Mississippi or nations where breastfeeding rates are very low. I think we've kind of come up with a model that's worked. So re-aim is really a scientific framework to look at how the model has worked, what things in the model have worked. So keep an eye out for that paper because we're close to finishing the work. And so we'll be writing up the paper and publishing before very long. Thanks to the Bauer Foundation and Kellogg, we have some funding to sustain the baby-friendly hospital in Mississippi. We have already embarked on that, and the continued data collection is one part of that, and we're in touch with our designated sites. Indeed, they have a special launch today for their group to help with maintaining the status and help to keep them motivated, because everybody goes to the prize, but then we need to make sure that people keep motivated. And then CHAMPS Ramps is our newest grant from the Kellogg Foundation. It will help us to continue CHAMPS baby-friendly work with all the hospitals. We're doing an assessment of breastfeeding education in prenatal care in Mississippi, in partnership with Blue Cross and Blue Shield in certain regions of Mississippi. Kathy Carruthers is going to be leading our Mississippi Wins, which is workplace increasing nursing support and helping to provide for breastfeeding women in the workplace in Mississippi. And we're also collaborating with Mississippi's historically black colleges and universities, who also have a special launch session today around lactation education opportunities to students in healthcare fields in their programs. And also we will be disseminating the interprofessional education module, which the historically black colleges and universities are really working on doing in Mississippi. Next slide, please. So what is the interprofessional education module? So this is Breastfeeding Human Medicine. This was funded by the Bauer Foundation and created in collaboration with CHAMPS. And basically we filmed and created a 3-hour module, which Amy is presenting a session on about later on today, if you're interested. And there will be sections and segments. It's really actually fun. Now, I say that and I wrote it, so I guess I'm really biased, but it is a fun module. And we are really excited that most people in Mississippi can see, well, everyone in Mississippi that is connected to an institution or a professional can see this for free. That's how the Bauer Foundation has set it up. And there will also be access to it for healthcare professionals to get continuing education credits. So this is a great product, let's say, of the CHAMPS era in Mississippi. And I encourage those of you who are interested to go watch that session later. Next slide, please. We are about to launch a new website, just so those of you who use our website or go to the website are familiar with it. It's ready to go now, but I always have this thing, don't change everything at once. And I certainly didn't want to change the website the week before the conference. So within the next couple of weeks, you will see our nice new website out there, which has been professionally created as opposed to created by our dear students who we love, but none of us is professionals. This is a professionally made website. So we're excited to be launching that within the next couple of weeks. Next slide, please. And then you will also hear today from some of our international work outside of Mississippi. As I mentioned earlier, we are now working in Greece, and we are working with refugees from all over Eastern Europe who come to Greece. So that is the current thing. We've also done a great deal of work with tribal communities, and I think perhaps I didn't mention this when we had the map up, but many representatives from tribal nations are on this conference today, and I saw a lot of old friends' names there, and I'm delighted that so many of you have joined the conference from India and Kochi, because we've had a great partnership with you for ages. And so there will be more about these things in the breakouts. Next slide, please. And just to give you the sort of baseline for cheering, that was created back in 2018 as a non-profit in Athens. We received funding, thank goodness, from Choose Love, which has allowed us to continue that program. And right now we are working in several refugee camps and shelters in Greece. Next slide, please. One of the things that the products we created from cheering was a poster which was in the Doctors Without Borders conference about a month ago. It was one of the top 10 posters there. This is a picture of the poster. It's available online. If you need it, you can get in touch with us. Maybe someone can put a link there also for that. And the poster is basically about the work in Europe. And that brings me to a nice segue into our little next session. So the current collaboration we're also doing in Europe is with the European Union of European Neonatal and Perinatal Societies. And we are working with them to look at some data across Europe on the impact that COVID has had in European hospital practices. Which brings me nicely to my next slide, because our main collaborator on that project is Dr. Ricardo Davanzo. So this is a very enjoyable part of the presentation for me. So I have some notes here that I'm going to just refer to as well. So every year we honor a Lifetime Achievement Awardee at CHEER. And usually, of course, we do that at the live conference, and we have them come and we present their award live. And unfortunately, for reasons you all know, we haven't been able to do that. But I will just a couple of words about the kind of background to this. I think we all know that many of us are on the breastfeeding circuit, as it were, and we are seeing people come different conferences, speaking at different conferences, we tend to see a lot of the same faces, and there are many, many unsung heroes out there. And so part of the goal for the Lifetime Achievement Awardees is that we recognize people who may not be quite as famous in our international breastfeeding field, because they don't push their speaking and everything quite so much, but they're absolutely critical, eminent people in the field. So I am now delighted to introduce Ricardo. Maybe Ricardo can come up on the screen with me. Hi, Ricardo. And I just want to give you a little introduction, and then Ricardo is going to present a few slides of his own, and then we'll go on to Jeanette. So Ricardo is our 2019 recipient. He is a neonatologist from Trieste in Italy, where I've had the delight of being able to visit and see Ricardo in situ. He is very well published researcher, physician, and teacher. He serves as the chair of the task force on breastfeeding in the Italian Ministry of Health. He's also an esteemed member of ISHML, the International Society for Research into Human Milk and Lactation, which is where we originally met. And in addition to his many kind of credentials in the field, he somehow manages at the same time to direct the pediatrics and neonatology division at Matera Hospital in southern Italy for 3 years, and has been for very, very many years neonatology consultant at Children's Hospital in Trieste. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Ricardo, and just many congratulations for all your great work. And we're really delighted that we're able to honor you today, and you're able to present a little bit of that for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne, for this kind introduction. I must say thank you for this very welcome award, and I take the opportunity to share with you some thoughts of my experience during my 40 years long career. So please, first slide. Okay. Obviously, I acted to promote breastfeeding as a neonatologist, and beside that, as a male neonatologist. And it's even a more challenging position. So next slide. At the beginning, I was inspired by breastfeeding when I've been working in Mozambique, and I experienced the breastfeeding as a component, particularly of kangaroo mother care, that is a technology to care for low birth weight infant and for preterm infants. We realized, because I've been working together with other Italian colleagues, we realized that it was an appropriate technology, not only for the south of the world, but only to the north. And we do our best to disseminate, not only in low and medium income countries, such a technology, but also in industrialized countries. We contributed to prepare recommendation for the application in high-tech environment, and we publish such recommendations on Acta Pediatrica. We contribute to the preparation of guidelines by WHO, but also we prepared some protocols to be used on daily basis, particularly an intermittent kangaroo mother care, because those days kangaroo mother care in industrialized countries was not complete an alternative care to incubator care. It was adjunctive intermittent care. Next slide, please. During my career, I devoted efforts and time and particularly to integrate the science of breastfeeding and of the promotion of breastfeeding into the neonatal protocols in order to have an evidence-based documents, and for example, for accompanying the passage of preterm babies from tube to the breast. But also it was important for me to counteract the negative attitude of many colleagues against breastfeeding, raising false contraindications. So I've done, let's say, a personal and institutional and at the end national project to try to clarify the true and the false contraindication. I mean, for example, for radiological contrast media and also for different categories of drugs, but also the compatibility between breastfeeding and pregnancy. In many schools, they just advise mothers who are lactating and became pregnant to stop breastfeeding. And more recently, we prepared the indication for breastfeeding among coronavirus positive mothers. But obviously, working in a teaching and research institute, I dedicated quite a long time to try to enhance knowledge among students and residents and colleagues. Also, developing some original course on breastfeeding, particularly one on the use of human milk in NICUs, and another one regarding the skin-to-skin contact during the first hours of life. Next slide, please. So I want to, from my career, I have learned a lesson that I want to share with you. I was always convinced, and I confirm in this belief, that it's very important to have a confrontation and synergy inside academia and with academia. It's not always simple, but it's the only way we can change the professional knowledge and also competence. So I believe that it's important to reach consensus, to prepare position statement that orientates daily clinical works among colleagues. And obviously also some details, clinical protocols for specific problems. I can witness after 40 years career that the scientific society position has changed, and also the health professional attitudes has changed, but not so fast as we would like to happen. So my message is to be patient, to lift up our hearts, let's say, and to consider that professional attitude change over time, because it's not always due to our professional investment in breastfeeding promotion, but also depending on cultural and socio-economical factors that slowly change. But I can assure that if we have a clear objective of works, if we have a good methodology to deal with colleagues, to act inside academia, results are expected. Obviously, at the very beginning, you have the immediate possible positive feedback from the mother and infant diets in the one-to-one relationship, professional relationship. Obviously, the epidemiological point is different. So breastfeeding rates change slower, but we must be patient and we must have a faith on it. So next slide. So I want to conclude this short presentation saying thank you to Cheering and Champs for the very appreciated and welcome award. And thank you all for listening to this my short award speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. Ricardo being the neonatologist we would all like in our hospital. I'm sure many of you have thought that during the talk. A wonderful colleague and friend. And I thank you for your talk, Ricardo, and congratulations again. And I'm just delighted we're able to honor you with something, with an award like this. Next slide, please. So our next awardee is Jeanette. So Jeanette is the awardee for 2020. If you would like to bring Jeanette up. Hello, Jeanette. Hey, Jeanette, we can hear you. So let me just give a quick introduction to Jeanette. We're very delighted Jeanette made it. Jeanette's out on Navajo Nation, where internet connections can be tricky. And I just want to say that we're really delighted that this year's Lifetime Achievement Award is going to my dear friend and colleague, Jeanette Yazzie. Jeanette is a member of the Navajo tribe. She recently retired from her position as nurse consultant for the Indian Health Service. After 30, and Jeanette, if you could just mute yourself till I'm finished the introduction. There's a little mute button because the papers are funny. There we go. So Jeanette retired after 37 years of nursing service in various different tribal communities, but mainly on Navajo. And on Navajo Nation, Jeanette led the Indian Health Service Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative. You can see my huge smile because I was involved in this initiative, and that's where I met Jeanette. And I have to say that one of the first things I thought when I met Jeanette was, oh my goodness, there are these people out here working like crazy on this. And you know, this hasn't even entered my radar screen before. I was just amazed at the amount of work that was going on with baby friendly that even me as a baby friendly expert, I wasn't aware of at all. Some of the memorable moments with Jeanette in Navajo, one of them included riding across the desert. There's a part of Navajo that looks like the sort of moon surface. And I was in the dust of Jeanette's car, and I was sort of driving behind her in this big dust cloud, trying to keep up with her because she's a really fast driver, let's put it that way. And then the other moment when she told me that I just go 100 miles north and then turn right at the gas station, which is like, the gas station, which one? She's like, there's only one gas station. And then many wonderful evenings spent together at Earl's Restaurant in Gallup, where Jeanette very helpfully negotiated the best deals for me on all the Indian jewelry that was being brought to our table. So I just had some wonderful personal moments. But, you know, we're really honoring Jeanette for her tremendous leadership of Baby Friendly on Navajo. She takes full credit for ensuring that all those hospitals were in shape. And I know she's going to give credit to the staff, but Jeanette was the director of this whole sort of engineering of this whole program. And indeed, all the hospitals on Navajo and in the whole IHS were designated in 2012. And Jeanette also helped to get many of them redesignated in 2017. And she's worked all her life to improve Native American health. So I will just turn it over to her. You can unmute and take it away, Jeanette. Oh, we can't hear. You need to unmute, Jeanette. You're still on mute. There you go.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. I appreciate it. It has been a great journey. And of course, I had the pleasure of meeting Anne in the whole process. And that's been in itself a reward. I am, like I said, Jeanette Yazzie, recently retired from the Indian Health Service, which is a federal government here on the reservation. These are some pictures here I just put on the front page, Candy Shea and Women Weaving, which we do here on the reservation. Next slide, please. Just to give you some introduction to the Navajo Nation, with Navajo Reservation is located on the very northeastern part of the state of Arizona. Actually, the Navajo Nation is about the size of the state of West Virginia, about 27,673 square miles. It consists of the states of New Mexico and Arizona and Utah, and borders Colorado. One of the reasons we really got into baby friendly here on Navajo was because of the large number of people among the Navajo population who are diabetic and suffer from obesity. Next slide, please. Here's just basically an idea of where the Navajo Nation is, the Navajo Reservation, in relation to the United States. Next slide. And this is a little bit closer picture of the Navajo Reservation itself. There are what we call agencies on the reservation in this whole area. And we have basically 6 hospitals. 4 of them are federally managed and operated, and 2 of them are managed by the tribe. And the next slide, please. And as Ann stated, this whole activity and involvement with baby friendly and bringing women back to what was naturally our cultural origin of breastfeeding was really the effort and commitment. And I'm going to get emotional here because there were a lot of people involved, and it was a mixed group, not just nurses. We had administration definitely behind this. We have public health nurses, health educators, physicians, even though it wasn't always an ET project in the beginning, but in due time, the group received what we call an area director award, which is a regional director award. And again, there's a picture of the team. We had an area-wide team, a Navajo area nationwide team, and then each hospital developed their own team members as well. Next slide, please. And there are some other team members there. And the first hospital that actually became baby friendly was our community in Crown Point. And there's a picture again with the background. The person in uniform is actually from our regional office in Maryland, and the gentleman behind the plaque is the CEO of the hospital, and then many of the other nurses, including doctors, there in the picture. Next slide. Here's some, again, pictures ongoing. I certainly welcome all of you. If you ever have the opportunity, we have open doors, especially once we get across the pandemic, to come and visit the reservation, the Navajo Reservation, Navajo Nation. There is a picture of Shiprock, and the team from Shiprock even went to the extent of putting up baby stations at community fairs, local events that happen on the reservation so that women could have the opportunity to have an area to breastfeed. Our prominent staple here are sheep and goats. So I want to make sure that I have a picture of sheep and goats here. The center there is our Navajo tribal flag. And again, Monument Valley. Many people have heard of Monument Valley. And I wanted to make sure that that was also included. And some of you may have even traveled to the Navajo Nation, and specifically to Monument Valley. It certainly is a major tourist attraction here on the Navajo Nation. Next slide. And finally, just a great hats off to Ann and her support and educational support and just being here on the reservation with us, going to all the hospitals, meeting the staff, and here's some pictures from the conferences, put posters up and part of the group. And with just the team effort, the group engagement, and the importance of supporting women and letting them know that breastfeeding was definitely the most healthiest way to support babies, and not only for moms and babies, but a good healthy beginning. The Indian Health Service, which consists of 13 hospitals, eventually have all been baby friendly certified and continue to be. So it has been a great accomplishment for the Indian Health Service, not only on the Navajo Nation, but across the country. Again, thank you so much for this honorable award, something that I wasn't expecting, but it was a great surprise. And again, only done because of the great support from the team. And I just wanted to end this by letting you know that you're welcome to my community of Lukachukai. And this is what I see each morning I go out my door. It's beautiful. Again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. Yeah, and Jeanette always is modest, but really she was responsible for much of what happened out there. So beautiful memories and a great thing. And one of the best things about the Indian Health Service being baby friendly, beyond simply being able to benefit so many mothers and babies and reconnect, as Jeanette said, with what would have been their traditional practices before the colonial hospital system basically took over and enforced a different kind of reality. It was really great also to see that the entire Indian Health Service went baby friendly, and that was a great example for the rest of the country, because it was like the first baby friendly hospitals in many states like Oklahoma and New Mexico and many states were Indian Health Service hospitals. And that was a great thing to be able to say, well, if Indian Health Service can do it, everyone can do it. So thank you, Jeanette.